Good morning and welcome to the June 6, 2019 Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting. If any member of the audience wishes to speak to an item on the agenda today, there are speaker request forms to the left of the dais. Please fill out the request with the agenda number of the item you wish to speak to and hand it to the secretary. At this time, we would also like to ask that if any member of the audience has a cell phone or other electronic device, that you either turn it off or turn the ringer to silent. If you need to take a call, please step out to the hallway so the meeting is not disrupted. Public hearing on item number 1, the approval of the May 23rd, 2019 Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting minutes is hereby opened.
Move approval.
All right, Karen made the motion to approve the May 23rd minutes. Is there a second? Mike Gallagher seconded that motion. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2.
Morning. Item number 2 is 19 VA 004, variance request to reduce setbacks and increase lot coverage at 923 West Boulevard. We saw this exact same request at the April 25th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting. That was 19 VA 001. The board acted on that decision. Unfortunately, we weren't paying attention and didn't realize that it failed due to lack of a 2/3 majority vote. So the applicant resubmitted the request. I'll take you through some slides. Property is located at 923 West Boulevard, a zone medium density residential district, as our properties surrounding it. Aerial view of the property. You notice it's a small lot. It's about 3,900 square feet, so it qualifies for small lot status. And there is an existing dwelling located on the property. Future land use is urban neighborhood, so the zoning fits. And then we take a look at the future land, or the major street plan, and West Boulevard is identified as a collector street, which would require a 25-foot setback, front yard setback from West Boulevard. Here we have the site plan. Take you through the requests. The first is to reduce the front yard setback from 25 feet to 15.5 feet from West Boulevard. What the applicant is proposing to do is to remove the existing deck and build a new covered porch. So actually the covered porch would be further away from the property line than the current existing deck. So it's less of an encroachment. The second request is to reduce the rear yard setback from 25 feet to 2 feet. In this area, the applicant is proposing to remove a concrete patio on that northwest corner and replace it with a wood deck, which would not further encroach into the setback. And Public Works staff has indicated that removing that concrete patio would be beneficial to drainage. The next request is to reduce the side yard the side yard setback from 12 feet to 5 feet, which is along this northern property line. And again, they're removing the concrete patio. It's an existing encroachment to that, and it will actually decrease how much the concrete patio encroaches into that setback. The next request is to reduce the side yard setback that abuts a street from 20 feet to 12 feet along South Street. Again, this is the existing setback, and then because they would be removing the front deck and replacing it, they'd need it for the cannot further encroach into a setback, but they wouldn't be. So those are the 4 setback requests, and then the final request is to increase the lot coverage from 30%, which is the maximum allowed, to 41.2%, which would include this covered front porch, so the covering over it. The existing lot coverage is already a legal non-conforming 38%. Here we have applicant's photo of that existing deck. And then the existing concrete patio, which would be removed on that northwest corner. And then elevations showing what the proposed roof over the front deck or porch would look like. Applicant's rendering. So staff is looking at this and seeing what is the minimum adjustment necessary for reasonable use of the land. The zoning ordinance does take into account whether there are existing structures which are legal non-conforming. So with all those setbacks, they're existing for the existing structure, and granting those variances would be providing reasonable use of the land as it is today. However, that adding the front roof over the front porch would be expanding on that use and would not be the minimum adjustment necessary for reasonable use of the land. Again, rendering of what that back wooden deck, for granting the variances to the setbacks, we'd, with the, excuse me, contingent upon that concrete patio being removed would be what we would advise. And then applicant photos looking at the front of the house, see the existing structure along West Boulevard to the north, across the street to the east, and other pictures in the area. One of the issues that came up in the at the last meeting was the historic nature of this property, and our historic review staff added that that the applicant has completed the historic review required by South Dakota state law, and that it was completed administratively. The subject property is a non-contributing structure in the West Boulevard Historic District and is not included in the period of significance for the West Boulevard Historic District, and that the proposed alterations are not found to be an adverse effect on the historic district. The applicant has also submitted additional photos showing covered front porches in the area. Most of these are legal non-conforming. However, we wanted to provide that as she wanted to provide that as justification, and so we have some of those, and we'll keep those for when the applicant, if she would like to speak. So again, staff is recommending that the 4 reductions to the setbacks be approved, contingent upon the concrete patio being removed. However, due to it being not the minimum adjustment necessary, we're recommending to deny the variance for lot coverage. Are there any questions for staff at this time?
Thanks, Fletcher. I don't see any lights up at this time. Justin?
Thanks. Just so I'm clear, not approving the lot coverage variance, does that impact what they're able to do? Or is that, I mean, is the proposed improvements get you to the 41.2%, or how would you stay to the 38% but still do the improvements? What's the correlation between the two?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Vicki.
So the difference would be if the porch was not covered, it would not contribute towards the percentage of lot coverage, and then she would stay with where she's currently at. So it's, again, as it was last time, whether or not that front porch should be covered.
Okay. So I think I missed the last meeting, so I apologize,
thank
but
you.
that's
No.
okay. So the setbacks are okay, but we're saying not cover the front porch. Is that the recommendation?
That's the recommendation because it wouldn't be the minimum adjustment necessary. It's in
Gotcha.
addition to what's already existing. So we're recommending to approve what's existing. It's not, that doesn't increase the encroachment and any setbacks, and it's for what is existing there today, but the roof cover would be increasing an already non-conforming issue.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Other questions for staff at this time? Uh, Seeing not, we have a couple speaker request forms. We'll go to Gene Kesloff to start. Gene, if you could identify yourself once you're up at the microphone and have at it.
My name is Jean Olson Kesloff, and I live in the West Boulevard Historic District. I am president of Historic Rapid City, served several terms on the Rapid City Historic Preservation Commission, and am a member of the West Boulevard Neighborhood Association. I'm here to speak on the proposed covered porch at 923 West Boulevard. I understand the desire of the homeowners to want a covered porch. I have a covered porch. But I feel I need to speak to this issue. This board, you, has rules and regulations that you must follow in making your decisions. For example, lot coverage. I did not know until I attended the April 25th meeting that lot coverage had to do with drainage, one of the reasons. Preservation has rules and regulations as well. Different ones apply to different situations, as do yours. The ones that apply here today are the ones that deal with settings and districts and neighborhoods, the Secretary of Interior standards. And under that is setbacks. I will read you a portion. Setting, district, neighborhood. The setting is the larger area or environment in which a historic building is located. It may be an urban, suburban, or rural neighborhood, or a natural landscape in which buildings have been constructed. The relationship of the buildings to each other, setbacks, fence patterns, views, driveways, and walkways, and street trees and other landscaping together establish the character of a district or neighborhood. Following the rules and regulations is what protects the district. Otherwise, those very things that created it are compromised to the extent that it no longer is eligible. It is the responsibility of Rapid City to maintain the status of the historic district. It made a commitment to the people in 1976 when the district was put on the National Register. Since then, it has been a struggle. First, on-street parking was put in. Not long ago, the east side of West Boulevard from St. Joe to South Street was rezoned to allow for a convenience store or a coffee shop. The city is pushing for the old homes to be multi-family dwellings, and now we are dealing with setbacks issues. Often we are known as those historical preservationists, among other things, I'm sure. But we are a group of people that believe in the history that West Boulevard has to tell, and the importance of that history to our city. I know it's hard to understand because a house is a house and a porch is a porch. What is the issue? But if other homeowners want to make the same changes, and there are a lot of houses that do not have porches, your district is in peril. Even as was stated, the porch will be historically correct. It cannot, because there was never one there to begin with. You cannot fake history. One more item. I suspect the decision that staff made was based on the house as a non-contributing structure. It should have been based on the property, and the property is defined as the historic district. And that this change with setbacks is an adverse effect on the historic district. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. We also have a speaker request from Mary, and maybe you could try your last name so I don't butcher it. Butchie.
It's spelled strangely. It's not your fault. Okay, I live at 923 West Boulevard, and I did as much research as I could before I came up with this plan. We will not be removing the existing pad and stairs. We will be keeping those and building, either using the stairs or building over it. It was stated that there was never a porch there, and I'm finding that hard to believe because the structure underneath the front stoop is the old root cellar. And I find it hard to believe that you would have put a root cellar in and not put a porch over it to protect from the sun. I'm old enough to have used a root cellar, and I'm finding that hard to believe. In addition, the original mail slot is over off of the pad. And I'm just having trouble thinking that the postman, leaned way over to put the mail in or reached way up to put the mail in. So I'm thinking something had to have been there. I haven't been able to find pictures of what it was, but something had to have been there. Additionally, for us, if we keep that ugly abomination of a 1980s deck on the front, I think that more adversely affects the historic character of the neighborhood. The deck is really not much use for my husband and I. We're both on medications that mean we can't be out in the sun too much. We use our sun time to walk the dogs and do the yard work. It makes that deck is really not useful. I'm going to keep it because I'm not going to affect the value of the property, but it is not useful to us if it's not covered. People talked about the drainage, and we really aren't having such a drainage issue because I took it upon myself to put the curb in. And with all those rains we've had, there is no more water running across the lots and down the street as there was when we moved in. It has made a significant difference. When I called and asked, I was told it would be at least 10 years till somebody fixed the curb, and I decided I didn't want to have water running across my property, so I took care of that. Additionally, not much water goes through the deck as it is. And there's rubber. They laid rubber underneath the deck to keep anything from going into the land. I would be removing that, so there would actually be more water be able to go down in under the porch than there is currently. I think it's an improvement to the neighborhood. We will not be out beyond the houses. The house next door is still going to be toward the street more than ours is, even with the covered porch. So, any questions?
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for the applicant? I'm not seeing any currently. How about questions or comments in general?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Vicki?
we have Sarah Hansel here today, and she is our historic preservation planner. I thought it might be helpful if she reviewed the process that Mary went through in seeking approval of the covered porch.
Sounds good. Sarah, do you have a minute?
Yeah, so, okay, thank you. As Fletcher noted, the applicant did go through the historic review process. We start with an administrative review, so I took a look at the plans and the standards that were referenced, the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. As was noted, this property is within the historic district, which is very important, but it does have a non-contributing status. And what that means is that when we look at the proposed project and its potential impact to the historic district, we're not necessarily holding it to the exact same threshold or the same standards that we would for a contributing property. And I certainly understand the concern for setting precedent of putting a porch on a property that wouldn't be allowed to have one if it weren't there historically on a contributing structure. However, looking at projects at a case-by-case basis is something we're very accustomed to doing in historic preservation review. It comes up a lot. A lot of things are on a case-by-case situation. It's a very diverse neighborhood. There's a lot of different architectural styles. So in looking at this particular proposal, really the question is, does this adversely impact the district? And with the materials being such as they are, with there being several covered porches in the neighborhood, it was not found that the scope of work would be an adverse effect to the district as a whole. And I can take any other questions if you want me to go into that in any further detail.
Great, thank you. Mike?
Did we, can I ask the staff a question on some pictures? I think originally we had some pictures that showed, she mentioned that the porch doesn't go out any further than the house next door. And I thought last time we had some pictures that showed, it seemed like there was another one. Maybe not. Do we know, in fact, that that's the case, that the house next door would be protruding out further than?
I'd be close.
So we're within a few
That's-
feet.
There, and then, I mean, it'd be, similar.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Because I think that the non-contributing structure that, as it is, I think the porch, fixing the porch and doing all the improvements that she wants to do won't make a difference. I don't know that this house, depending on when the porch was put on, which is in the 80s, it'd probably be a while before it would be a contributing structure, if it ever will be. And so I think the improvements that she's planning to make as far as fixing the porch and doing all that thing is appropriate. The question, I think, comes down to whether the roof should be over the top, because that's the difference between allowing this current side yard setbacks and whether the lot coverage should be denied. So I think I would like to separate the two and make a motion that says the front yards or all the setbacks be approved contingent upon the concrete patio being removed, and then we can discuss whether the roof should be over it or not, and that's going to be my motion.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Vicki?
friendly amendment to the motion maker. Citing criteria, in the report, Fletcher's identified that the setbacks do meet all 4 criteria, noting specifically that the small lot status creates a hardship in meeting the minimum setbacks.
Thank you, Vicki. I always forget those things you have to add. Thank you.
So Karen made the motion to approve at this point only the setbacks as noted by staff to be approved contingent upon the concrete patio being removed. And to be honest, I didn't miss the second. Vince seconded that motion. Is there further, I got Galen and Justin, do you have comments on that motion, or? Okay. Then I think we can take a vote on that one. All those in favor of Karen's motion on the setbacks only, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. So then we can discuss the lot coverage now. Galen, would you like to go on that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So let's talk about that concrete patio that was removed. Does that factor into the lot coverage reduction? Or is that considered, that wasn't considered being,
That's not considered, lot coverage is rooftop, so it doesn't take into account driveways or sidewalks or concrete patios. But removing that concrete patio, Public Works staff is in support because that would improve drainage because
Right.
on that side of the house.
so I'm trying to, I did a little math to try to figure out what the actual reduction would be. So we've got, that patio is 16 foot by 9, so that's 144 square foot. We're effectively removing that much. And when you talk about lot coverages for drainage and that sort of thing, you're effectively increasing your drainage potential by 144 square foot. The deck that we're putting on is 8 by 32. And can you pull up a picture of the deck as it is today? I think it's in the, right there. Yep, that one. So there's a bit of an overhang currently. If you say that's maybe a 1 or 2 foot overhang, effectively your porch is only going to increase by 6 feet when you think about it, it's an 8 foot wide, but you're already overhanging by 2 feet. So effectively, we're increasing, the porch is adding 32 feet by 6 feet. That's 192. So we're adding 192, subtracting 144. That's an increase of 48 square feet. And it's a 6,500 square foot lot. So that says we're really talking about an increase of 0.74%. I think that's a very small increase in lot coverage when you factor in you're removing a concrete patio and replacing it with a wooden deck. That's something that's going to be able to drain through. So I think if we're looking at it from the drainage aspect, this is a very minor increase by adding the covered porch. So I would be in support of allowing for the covered porch here.
Thanks, Galen. Justin?
Thanks. Because I was gone last time, so forgive me for asking probably what was asked last time, but the setbacks, the new structure is not encroaching any further than the existing. So it's basically replacing the footprint of the deck, correct? Okay, so I tend to agree with Galen in that I don't know that there's an adverse impact. You know, I like the input from historic preservation because that's obviously key here, but if they're okay with it, to me, adding the roof does not adversely impact drainage really at all. If so, it's really, really minimal. Obviously, the drainage needs to be controlled coming off the roof and where it goes, that kind of thing. But so I guess I tend to agree with that. I don't see an adverse impact, and then frankly, from a personal opinion, I think it looks better than the deck. But that's just kind of a personal opinion, I guess. But so anyway, I guess that's my comment. Thanks.
Rachel?
Thank you for the quick calcs, Galen. I think that's very helpful in, kind of showing what we're really talking about. I think this lot is kind of unique, excuse me, in the sense that not only is it the actual useful space of it is so small, but the boulevards are pretty large too. And when you think about those larger boulevards, all that grass on either side, it's a corner lot. I agree with Galen. I think this is unique enough that the drainage is not going to be negatively impacted. And I think it is a reasonable use of the land to have a covered porch, because I too have problems in the sun. And if you don't have shade, you can't go outside. That's just the way it is. So I'm also in support of the covered porch for those reasons.
Thanks, Rachel. Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I may have misunderstood. We authorized variances to this property partly because they were removing that patio. And now we're using the patio as an excuse to do away with the rules regarding coverage of the lot. So I'm a little confused as to which way we're going on this, because I'm all in favor of these variances based on the fact that we were getting rid of that patio. And to use it for another reason seems unfair as to what we just voted on. On the other hand, I understand completely about, the sun and what the effects on the human body. It's understandable. I use an umbrella on my deck. I'd love to put a roof over it. But because I'm abiding by the rules and regulations, I don't see why we need to make exceptions in this particular case. We've already granted variances where we didn't have to. So my thought is that and if I thought the Historic Society, she left, but I thought her point was that this coverage shouldn't be approved. We shouldn't improve the coverage of the lot because that's the way their rules were set up. And maybe Sarah can kind of clear that up for me, but I'm starting to get confused on this.
So Ms. Olsen-Kesloff is a stakeholder in the West Boulevard Historic District. She is not currently on the Historic Preservation Commission. So she did share some thoughts that she has today about what the standards are for how changes to non-contributing buildings are evaluated. I don't happen to agree with that, and the State Preservation Office and several others on the current historic preservation also don't agree with that. So those are her perspectives on how to treat a non-contributing building, but those aren't the perspectives that are shared by the people reviewing the applications.
Okay, thank you. I do understand that now.
Karen?
Thank you. I'd like to discuss the reason why the variance for the lot coverage is not appropriate as far as the staff's report goes. And when we look at lot coverage, we don't look at the deck itself. I mean, we do, but the deck itself, if it has no covering, is not going to change the lot coverage today. It's not, that's not the issue. The issue is when you put a roof over the top, you measure the difference in the lot coverage based on your roof, not the deck itself, but the roof is what they're going by, correct? Okay, so when you look at that and say, okay, if you just strictly look at what we do for zoning board and what reasons why we have what we have, it's because is there reasonable use of the land? And without the deck covered, there's still reasonable use of the land, and that's the reason for the denial on the staff's part. For me, I agree. I think a covered deck would be great because I also have a deck on the east side, and so we don't go out and sit on the deck in the morning. We go out in the afternoon when it's cool, and because we don't have a roof and we don't have the sun hitting on us, and so that's how we use our deck in the afternoon. But I still have reasonable use of my deck, and so it's hard for me to say. I think that lot coverage it's not a big deal. It's not that. It's the reasons why we are a zoning board, and if we've got reasonable use of the land, it's hard for me to say, well, it's okay to add a few more feet, and who cares? So that's going to be my comments, and I probably would vote no if there was a motion to approve that. I would be more inclined to vote denial because of the rules that we go by. So that's my comments.
Thanks, Karen. Eric?
Thank you. And I agree with Karen, the fact that I would probably vote to deny based on we do have rules and regulations that we need to follow, and it would be great just if everybody had a story that would make us feel good to go ahead and approve it, but we have rules and regulations for a reason. And it's already legal non-conforming, and we're going from 38 to 41% based on the roof coverage. There's some statements in the letter that was provided that are quite nebulous. The fact that the contractor may have to build a retaining wall, but it may or may not need to be installed. The contractor will attempt to install this retaining wall, but may encounter issues. The contractor will not know until the work is whether the retaining wall was needed or not, until the work is commenced. So there are a lot of nebulous things that we don't know. And the last time that we addressed this, it was on drainage, and I do believe that somebody on this commission did mention that we did have a drainage issue in the West Boulevard area. And whether or not this impacts it, we just don't know. And until we have some concrete information as to how this might be impacted, I would vote no on this this amendment. If we do have a drainage issue, then we just certainly don't need to be adding to it. But we have whether or not it's a good idea to put a porch on because it helps somebody with sun issues, that's one thing. But we do have these rules set up for a reason. Thank you.
Galen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'll just kind of reiterate, this is really just a less than a 1% increase in the lot coverage, so it's such a minor thing. I honestly don't understand why it couldn't be approved administratively. I guess it's an adjustment, not a zoning board of adjustment thing. But another thing is look at the surrounding homes. You've got lot coverage that, the next door house to the east, the house covers the entire lot. The next door house to the east covers the entire lot. This is this house on the corner probably has the least lot coverage of any of its surrounding 6 neighbors. So it's really the least, the house that should have the least concern with lot coverage of anything in the area. So I guess I've stated my other reasons of why I think it's just such a minor increase in lot coverage. I think we should allow this. So I will make the motion to approve the request for variance in lot coverage, citing the criteria that it's, which one should I cite? Let's do this. Let's use the same one that we cited last time. It's the it's in harmony with the general purposes and would not be injurious to the neighborhood or detrimental to public welfare. So that would be my motion.
Second.
Okay, Galen made the motion to approve the lot coverage from 30 to 41% based on the first criteria as he stated, and John seconded that motion. Vicki, if you...
Again, 2 points. One being a friendly amendment to the motion maker. The small lot size, the status, creates a unique circumstance for this property, and that probably should be cited as a reason behind requesting the variance. So first, if that's okay with the motion maker. And secondly...
Does that work for you too? Yes. Okay, thanks.
We did sit down with the City Engineering Division to review the drainage discussion, and Eric, thank you so much for bringing that up. I meant to clarify that earlier. They have looked at the plan as a whole and presented before you today and determined that covering the deck will not have a negative impact on the drainage. And we did not bring that to your attention, so thank you for doing that.
All right. Justin,
Chair?
comments? Eric?
Are we going from 30% lot coverage, or are we going from legal non-conforming 38% to 41%?
I believe it says 30 because that's the rule, not necessarily what exists now.
Okay.
So we're starting at 38 in reality, but 30 is the rule, and that's how it's written on the application.
Exactly. When you take something off, then your legal nonconforming goes away. That's why you have all the setback requests today. Same thing with the lot coverage. To remove what is being done means that she has to start from 30 going forward. But at the end of the day, she has the 38% now and is requesting to go to the 41.2%. So that's the reality of the situation.
Justin?
Thanks. Fletcher, can you pull up the daytime photo of the patio real quick? Just to help Eric out from what I see from the drainage standpoint. If you can look at it, it's a wood deck, right? So basically what happens when it rains, everything that hits the wood deck there's probably gaps, so it goes through and goes underneath the deck. You can see the roof right now, there's a gutter on the end of it, comes off the end to a downspout. All you're doing is taking that square footage, adding a roof, and that much added to the downspout now that's gonna get moved out. So all the water, basically, it's either falling around the patio or it's getting concentrated into that downspout. So all the rain's there, it's just being directed to a certain spot. I would assume the downspouts kicking it out away from the house, but the amount of rain hitting it is still there, and then it's going to an impervious spot on the lot, which is either the yard or the spot under the deck. So to me, I would agree with Public Works that drainage-wise, we're not really impacting it because it's already there. So just kind of an opinion, I guess. Thanks.
Vince?
I believe that drainage was really never the issue here. The issue is the variances that we've already provided for this lot. When we start to compare coverage, we don't know the coverage of all those other homes in the neighborhood. So that's an unfair analogy to say that the other homes are equal to this particular lot and this particular home. In addition to that, There are alternative ways to protect that, anyone sitting on that deck when it comes to signage. And then I mentioned umbrella, but then there are retractable roofs, you know. Several of my neighbors have that. So if we start to make these variances and we start to provide these, where does it stop? So I'm not in favor of continuing to increase the lot coverage of this particular lot.
Rachel?
Okay, sorry, there's a lot of conversation, so I just thought I'd kind of recap to make sure that I understand where everyone's sitting. We have the engineering department saying that this isn't likely to cause any drainage issues. We have City Historic Review saying that this doesn't cause any issues with them. You know, we have a neighborhood that already has multiple covered porches, and so that's not unusual either. We have a unique lot, and so we can look at it and say, well, we are granting this because this lot is unique. It doesn't apply to other lots, so I don't think this is going to open some sort of floodgates. I don't understand what the opposition is to this, honestly, but thank you.
So the motion on the floor is by Galen, seconded by John, to approve the increase in lot coverage. Vince?
Rachel, what it is that we're setting a precedence. So if we do it for this particular lot, even though, as you stated and clearly and logically, and so did Galen, I'm not opposed to what you're saying. Those are great arguments, and the homeowner is making a good argument too. The question that we have now is, once we set that precedence, where do we stop? So that's the argument to this, regardless of all of the other of those in favor of it. You have to consider the fact, well, now you did it, you opened it up, where are you going to stop? And I don't hear anybody saying this is it, we're never going to do it again. So, well, if this will always be open for review, which it should be, but in this particular case, I can't find a reason to go forward with it. We made variances on this lot already, and we compromised. So it's got to stop somewhere, and that's where my point is.
Mike Kwasny?
And what I was going to state is that it does set a precedence, and that's, I think, where the problem exists, is that as you go forward, where does it stop? Because then you start a new line, you draw new lines in the sand. I think it's a beautiful addition. I like the way that it looks. I really do. I think it makes a lot of sense. But as we set up here, and we have to decide at what point do we stop adding or increasing the sizes, the effect that we have. And it's a hard decision. Yeah, it looks beautiful. Yeah, it'd be great for the coverage. But I think that Vince did a great job of saying there are options out there that can do the same thing. They're more work on a regular basis. Once you have it up, you don't have to deal with it anymore. But I believe I have to go probably with not going with this.
Wade, do you have something to chime in with?
Yeah, I just wanted to remind the Board of Adjustment of the standards for granting a variance. There's been a lot of talk about the special conditions of the lot itself, and there's actually more to the ordinance than just having a special condition. It's that causes an unreasonable hardship, and so I just want to make sure that you understand that portion of it and take that into consideration when you're making your decision. It has a special condition in that it's a small lot. It's, and we've talked about that previously, but you need to find that creates an unreasonable hardship, and that the variance would be the minimum adjustment necessary to rectify that so that there's reasonable use.
Thanks, Wade. Galen?
Just wanted to point out, we really don't ever consider precedents when it comes to these decisions, and nowhere in the staff report does it talk about previous examples in the neighborhood or other cases of nearby properties. And I mean, have we anybody else on the board done research on to see if in fact there was a previous, covered porch situation in the last 50 years, or maybe anything similar to this? I mean, we're not considering it here. I don't think we'll consider it in the future. That's not part of the review process, is to look at case history and other precedents. So I don't think that's a consideration here. It's every time that a project comes forward, we review it. And in this case, we're looking at, okay, are they increasing it from X percent to Y percent? In this case, it's a very small percent. So I think that's part of our job, is to figure out what's a reasonable minor increase to allow these things. It's if it meets all standards, then they wouldn't have to come here. That's kind of the point of why they bring it here, is we're supposed to be deciding what's an acceptable tolerance to adjust from the standard. So,
Karen's ahead of you, but
Thank you. This will be short. I think that when you look at a zoning board of adjustment, what are we here to do? And we're here to look at the land, and typically when we approve things, it's because the slope of the land is not usable and they can't use it for whatever they need to do. So they're going to put a structure, they're going to do something, and they can't do it because the land is there to the property line, but it goes straight downhill, and they just can't use that land. There's a reason why we take a look at our zoning laws and say it fits everything, but because the land is the way it is, they can't use it. And that's what I'm looking at. Is there reasonable use of this property? And that's what I base my decisions on, pretty much. I look at the land and say, yeah, they can live there, they can use their house, and they can use their deck, some other type. I don't disagree that the pictures that we see, it's to me an improvement of the property, what she's doing. I applaud her for what she's going through. But when it comes down to my job as a zoning board of adjustment member, is to look and say, it's great and I'd love to give it to you, but you still have reasonable use, and I just can't get past that part. So I'm still on the no side. So,
Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only reason why I've talked about precedents is because I'm not the one that mentioned the other properties in the neighborhood. So you have to understand, somebody else mentioned that. You can refer to the record. That's why I was talking about precedents, because you were pointing out the other houses in the neighborhood may have these same features. But I want to stick with what Karen said, and I want to make sure that we are, and what our legal advice is, we are not creating an undue hardship for the applicant. So I can't see approving something like this. And yes, I understand the math. It does come out to a very small fraction of what we've already provided, or what the zoning has already provided. So I think we've made reasonable accommodations. I think the staff's homework is done, and I'm still not in favor of it, and I'm agreeing with Karen.
Eric?
And I just want to address what Galen said about precedents. And, you know, it may not be this specific kind of incident, but precedents does come up periodically. We talked about the Common Sense place on just right across the street from Box Elder. And we talked about the precedents that would be setting in terms of the height of the sign that they wanted to put in. So precedents does come into consideration, and we need to consider that in making our decisions on future decisions that we make on this. It can't just be a feel-good kind of thing that feels right to do. We have to think about the future requests. Thank you.
Okay, the motion on the floor, still to approve the lot coverage increase. Justin, more new comments?
Just real quick. Here's a point I would make. We should be, if everybody wants to deny going to 41.2, we should be voting on taking it to 38, because that's where it's at. So there's already a variance. We've already allowed a variance to the code because we're at 38%. Is that correct?
Vicki or Fletcher?
So, no, there is, what's there today is legal nonconforming. When she removes those portions of the deck and patio, then we go back down to 30%. So, as I noted earlier, in reality, there's 38% there today, but once she removes it, then you have to start from the 30% and come forward. I guess, Fletcher, if we were to allow just what's there without, because the covering, if we just took off the deck and the roof area, do you know what the coverage?
38%.
It is 38. So you can grant less than what's advertised, which is the 41.2%. So Justin, you probably do make a very good point that at a minimum, we need to get back to the footprint of what is covered, which is 38%.
So I'm not saying we do that. What I'm saying is, I mean, we're arguing over, the variance is there. I mean, what's in place does not conform to what we're saying the lot coverage should be. So to counterpoint, while we're creating these variances, it's there. I mean, it exists. So now we're talking about 3% more. So I just wanted to clarify that we're already there, everybody. Like, you know, it's as it sits today, it's at 38%. So, you know, that's just, I guess, to me, that's why to me it seems like we're there. All she wants to do is cover it. It really doesn't impact it. It adds 3%, 180 square feet, whatever it is, but we're already non-conforming. So the precedence is already set. Thanks.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
so I think we all concur that this is a small lot. It doesn't create drainage issues to have the rooftop. This is really why these boards are comprised the way they are. You are all have individual positions on these things, and it comes down to a personal decision. Do you feel that this is the minimum adjustment necessary to allow reasonable use of the property? And I don't think until you vote we're going to know how this board as a whole feels.
One question I have before asking for a vote, should the current motion not be approved by the 2/3 number, could we as a board consider a motion after that to increase from 30 to 38% to cover the existing structure?
None of the building permits that Mary will need for the patio and the deck without the roof do not impact the lot coverage. The existing core of the house itself is legal nonconforming today, and that will stay. So I don't think you need to come back and grant an alternate variance. That remains legal nonconforming. Now, if you wanted to grant a variance to allow the 38% for the home as it sits today, so that if in the future something happened and a part of the structure was hurt by lightning or something and she had to come back and rebuild it, then that variance would be that she could build back in that footprint. That would probably be to her advantage, and it's something you could do based on the application before you, where you could grant it. Now, we'll have to turn to Wade, because the request is to go from 30% to 41.2%. If that motion fails, can they come back and grant something less?
Yes, I think you can. I think you can have another motion that says go from 30 to 38 in lieu of the 30 to 41.2.
Okay, good to know. I don't have anybody else currently looking to comment. So the motion on the floor, just to repeat one more time, Galen made the motion and John seconded it to increase the lot coverage from 30 to 41.2% based on the small lot status. And my screen went dead, but all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. 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 Opposed?
No.
Can we do a roll call, Andrew?
Just to clarify, I have 10 on the dais. Only 9 will vote.
Okay.
Braun,
Yes?
Bowman, Caesar, Gallagher, Herr? Hoogstraat? Quasny? Van Grevesche? Vidal? I have 5 to 4. Motion fails.
Okay, choice now is to either consider another motion or to move on.
I will make a motion that will grant a variance to move from 30% to, is it 38 exactly, or 38 something? Okay, on the lot coverage.
Okay, Karen made the motion to increase the lot coverage to 38%. Is there a second? Mike Gallagher seconded that motion. Rachel, discussion?
Do we need a legal justification for that?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Vicki.
Yes, you do, and I think that because this is for the existing structures, the 4 criteria cited in the setback variance would be appropriate for the lot coverage variance.
Does that work for the motion maker and second? Okay. Further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. With no other items on the zoning board, I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, Rachel made the motion and Mike Quasny seconded that motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. We will now commence the Rapid City Planning Commission meeting for June 6, 2019. Again, if any member of the audience wishes to speak to an item on this agenda, please fill out a speaker request form and hand it to the staff along the left wall. And if you still haven't turned off your cell phone or turned it to silent, please do so. Items 1 through 9 have been placed on the consent calendar and may be approved as a group. Action will be taken on all consent items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent calendar by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration. The findings of this planning commission are recommendations to the city council. The city council will make the final decision with the exception of the following item. Item 5, 19 PD 021. The Rapid City Planning Commission's action on this item is final unless any party appeals that decision to the Rapid City Council. All appeals must be submitted in writing to the Department of Community Development by close of business on the 7th full calendar day following action by the Planning Commission. Are there any items 1 through 9 that staff would like removed from the consent calendar for separate consideration? Any items 1 through 9 that any planning commissioner would like removed?
2 and 9, please.
Okay. And any items left that any audience member would like removed? The chair would then entertain a motion to approve items 1 and 3 through 8 from the consent calendar per staff's recommendations. All right, Rachel made that motion. And Karen seconded the motion. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2. Eric?
I just had a question when it comes to the property as it butts to the pond and to the grasses. So this is basically a question to the staff. Is there any prior designation of any kind of wetland designation, anything like that, that would interfere with this change change to the property?
So there is drainage to the east of the existing barn that will be located in an easement at such time as the property is platted. There aren't any Corps of Engineer wetlands that are designated on the property. Okay. So as it stands today, there won't actually be any new development of the site. But in the future, if they were to come in to expand the businesses and require that building permit, then we would address the drainage at that time.
Okay. Thank you. May I go ahead and discuss number 9, or?
We need to move on item number 2. I'd look for a motion on number 2. Okay. Vince made the motion to approve item 2 per staff recommendations, and I heard Karen second it. Any further discussion on 2? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 9, Eric.
And again, just another question to the staff is, the access of this property, is it going to be on Highway 44 or is it going to be on Michelson? And does it warrant a traffic study?
Mr. Chair. So the access to that property currently is off of East Highway 44. The South Dakota Department of Transportation has indicated that should a multifamily development occur on that property, access may be restricted from Highway 44 and may be required off of Mickelson at that time. So currently access is off of Highway 44, but with redevelopment of the property, it would be located to the east off of Mickelson Drive.
And then to the second part of your question, rezoning it does not trigger the traffic impact study. If they were to come in for a building permit and it would have more than 150 units within an apartment complex, that would trigger a traffic impact study.
I understand that this is going to be used for dormitories for, for Western Dakota Tech. Does that not fall into that category then?
Not necessarily. We're hopeful that it will serve as dormitories for Western Dakota Tech, but until it exceeds that 150 unit mark, it does not trigger a traffic impact study.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion on item number 9?
Move approval. Recommendations.
Okay. Karen made the motion to approve item number 9 per the staff's recommendation. And Vince seconded that motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 10.
Item number 10 is a preliminary subdivision plan to create 265 residential lots to be known as Shepherd Hills subdivision. And this property is located south of Menards and east of East Anamosa Street. And I put this on non-consent because in all the years I've been here, this is the largest preliminary subdivision plan I've ever looked at. And it's been a wonderful master plan, laying out a diversification of housing. In addition, at your last meeting, you approved a preliminary subdivision plan to create Shepherd Hills West, directly west of this, that creates a mobile home residential lot and a multifamily lot. This is exactly what the comprehensive plan encourages developers to do, to create diversified housing within areas of our community to meet those needs. I had an opportunity to tour the site with one of the property owners some time back, and the views from some of these lots, we're going to have affordable housing, we're going to have apartment-style housing, mobile home availability. In addition, there's going to be a price range on some of these homes from estate homes to lower and middle income homes. So I'll just run through the slides real quick because this is really something to see. Again, it shows the area that's currently zoned general agriculture and light industrial. Earlier on your consent agenda, you approved rezoning requests to change the western half to medium-density residential and the eastern half to low-density residential. Future land use plan, we weren't sure exactly where the mixed-use commercial line should go. The applicant is shoring it back to follow his lot line, and the future land use planners have indicated that's a reasonable adjustment. You'll be seeing that amendment come forward as a city project in the near future. The major street plan shows the extension of East Anamosa Street, that's the blue principal arterial street extending through the western portion of it, and then East Philadelphia Street is a huge connection that will extend through this site as well as the Shepherd Hills West plat that you reviewed at your last meeting, connecting with Creek Drive. In addition, you'll see that as the properties to the south develop, there will be a connection down to Mickelson Drive. Now, on this site, they asked for an exception not to do a traffic impact study, and that was granted because of the city's most recent East Rapid Corridor study that was completed that addressed residential development in this area similar to what was proposed by the applicant, indicating that improvements of the collector, the arterial, and existing street intersections and signalized intersections, they will meet the traffic demand provided by this or created by this development. The layout of 265 lots. showing different lot sizes. And again, to the west of this is where the multifamily and mobile home residential lots were created through a separate preliminary subdivision plan. It's going to be platted in 10 phases with the future phase, maybe all at once, phase 11, or maybe even breaking it down even further, looking at demand as you need it. But again, in a very aggressive attempt in creating housing. And with all that we see in our community, where it's noted that we have a demand for housing right now, and in addition with what's going on with Ellsworth Air Force Base, we are looking at meeting additional housing needs, and this project certainly takes a huge step forward in providing those needs. The day I was out there, it was rainy, go figure, and so it was kind of a sloppy mess. This is looking back down East Philadelphia Street, and it'll be good to see those improvements come forward. And looking into the site, just noting the rezone signs are in place, and then back down East Anamosa Street. So we're pleased with the project in this area to provide that housing need. We are recommending that it be approved with stipulations. And I just wanted to bring it to your attention. I didn't want it to stay on consent and you folks not realize the magnitude of this project.
Thanks, Vicki. Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Vicki, I wondered why this was not on the consent calendar, because it looked like something that's going to be a great benefit to the city. So I appreciate the fact that you brought this out so that we can actually, see it again. And I agree, it's a lot of different multi-housing. That's what we look for. So thank you.
Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I likewise, I like that it was brought up, because this is it looks like it's an amazing thing to be put into our community, and it's at a needed time. As you mentioned, the base is expanding, and the town in general is expanding, so this is a great thing. I also like that there's a plan for traffic to get away from here. It's not a one access. I guess the only question I have, at what point will that traffic go all the way through to those other exit points at the time that this is developed, or at what point do those access points happen?
So actually stipulation number 4 addresses that. I'm sure you enjoyed reading all those stipulations.
Yeah.
And it cites that when they come forward with phase 2, the street connection to East Philadelphia Street, connecting it to Creek Drive, will need to be in place at that time. And because it's the same developer for Shepherd Hills West as well as Shepherd Hills subdivision, we'll continue to coordinate with them to ensure that that comes forward.
I think it's great that we're addressing those early on, because there are areas where we haven't, and we have problems with traffic. So I think that's an amazing thing that we're taking care of it early on. So thank you.
Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I just wanted to say thank you too. And just an FYI, I mean, I drive to Ellsworth Air Force Base every day, and I see the growth that is taking place out there. And it's all of the new housing units that are being built are right next to the base. I mean, they're just right across the street and other places. So this is closer to home, obviously, and closer to our services of groceries and as well as schooling and education. And so because of that, I'm really liking this project. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on item number 10? Look for a motion then.
Make a motion to approve.
All right. Rachel made the motion to approve item number 10 with the staff stipulations, and Mike Goller seconded that motion. Mike Quasney seconded that motion. Discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 11.
Item number 11 is 19 PD 019, a major amendment to a plan development to allow an on-sale liquor establishment in conjunction with a restaurant. And this is in the existing building, the Landstrom's building in the Gap, which is located at 405 Canal Street. We've seen a lot of redevelopment, reuse of this building, which is fantastic for the city and for the area. Zone general commercial with a planned development. Take a look, there's the existing Landstrom's Gold building, a lot of different uses in there. The last major amendment we saw was for an on-sale liquor establishment in conjunction with a microbrewery on the east side of the building. And at that time, it was identified that a restaurant would be coming forward, and in the future, it would have, there would be a major amendment for an on-sale liquor establishment. And that really goes to the stipulations of approval, which recommended to reduce the minimum required parking from 175 to 117 parking spaces. There's already a building permit issued for Juniper Restaurant to be going into that space. And they've identified that their hours of operation are Tuesday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. With 5 full-time staff and 5 part-time. They'll have 1,588 square feet of restaurant space indoors, and then an 865 square foot outdoor patio. And these are all already in place. What we're looking at is the on-sale liquor use for the restaurant. Future land use is mixed-use commercial. We do have Parks and Greenway to the north, and we do have other on-sale liquor establishments, primarily 2 microbreweries in the near area. But there is no residential in this area. It's sandwiched between West Omaha and West Main Street as arterial streets, but is accessed from West Rapid and Canal Street and Cross Street. Here we have a site plan. Other uses in the building include coffee shop with a drive-through, microbrewery, and other retail and services. Floor plan showing that the restaurant will be located on the north side of the existing structure. And here we have kind of a floor plan of what the layout of the restaurant will be. And then this is the existing outdoor area where they will be fencing in a outdoor seating area, which would be accessed from the inside of the restaurant. Some elevations, which we've looked at before, and then here we're looking at the property. Signs posted. This is, you can see Juniper coming soon, right in that area. Looking along the street to the west, some park area to the north. But the comprehensive plan recommends having some activity generating uses in this type of area. Again, looking to the north at the park area, and then to the west on this one, and the existing parking lot. And you can see Dumb Brothers Coffee in this location. So staff's recommendation is to approve with stipulations noted in the staff report, and the applicant's agent is here if there are any questions.
I just have one semi-serious one. How did you find a dry and sunny day to take pictures over there?
I'm not sure.
Mike Goller.
I noticed on there they have the original that was based on the anticipated mixed uses and the cross patronage, that parking would work. Is the applicant maintaining that is currently working as they anticipated, or is there parking issues going on there now?
I do believe there has been, on social media has been some concern about parking. However, what they're really pushing is that there is that existing parking on the west side of the building, which is underutilized. And so they're really pushing to get that used more. I think the complaints are more on the other side of the building where there's limited parking, but we don't see that there's any issue with parking, and that if they operate in compliance with the operations plan and how they said it would work, it should continue to work.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments on this one? I'd look for a motion then, if there is.
Make a motion to
All right, Rachel made the motion to approve item number 11 with staff stipulations.
Second.
And John seconded the motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Any discussion items, staff items today? I just have one. I know that was a long discussion on zoning board of adjustment, but I really appreciate that kind of debate. It was a tough issue. There was maybe not a clear right answer, but it's good to go through those things in such fashion. I'd look for a motion to adjourn. All right, Mike Gallagher made the motion to adjourn, and Rachel seconded the motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. We're adjourned.